The Locked On Podcast Network presents The Big 6 in 60. The 6 biggest national sports stories from the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network. Get the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now with the biggest story in sports.
Aaron Rodgers bashes the Jets over the way they handled his departure from the team.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast.
We're going to begin by talking about the past of the New York Jets because Aaron Rodgers went on the Pat McAfee show yesterday and made news because he had a lot to say about the way the Jets handled his departure. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about Aaron Rodgers because, he's in the past and we got to look to the future. That era, which was, if we're being honest, nothing short of a disaster, is over. But this is national news. This is one of the top stories in the NFL on this Friday, and it's the top story around the New York Jets. So I think it is worth discussing because Rodgers had a lot to say about the way the team handled his departure. In particular, a meeting that he had with Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji after the new head coach and new general manager were hired. And the Jets, of course, with their new regime, decided to move on without Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers was complaining. He said that he flew across the country. He said, I figured when I flew across the country on my own dime that there would be some sort of discussion about his future. And that essentially 20 minutes into the meeting, it was over. And they immediately told him that, we're moving on without you. He was not given a chance to state his case. He was not given an opportunity to make an argument for why he should stay. Rodgers said there was not an ample amount of respect for him in that meeting. He also wondered aloud why the Jets would not pick his brain about their future. And there's a lot to unpack here. I don't think anybody out there, maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong. I don't think anybody out there is going to be shedding too many tears for Aaron Rodgers that he flew across the country on his own dime. I mean, that's the way Aaron Rodgers travels across the country is a little bit different from the way you or I travel across the country. And I mean, this is an educated guess, but Aaron Rodgers certainly seems like the type of guy where if they had done it over the phone, one of his complaints was they already made their decision and only took 20 minutes. Why did I have to fly across the country? Why could they have not just done it over the phone? I think as well as I do, if they had done it over the phone, Aaron Rodgers would be complaining, why wouldn't you say it to my face? There's really, I think it's really silly and really petty for Rodgers to get upset over something like that. I would imagine from the Jets' perspective, they wanted to say it to his face, and they addressed with him how he wanted them to announce it. They were trying to be respectful. Rodgers apparently having none of it. I have no idea why Rodgers would think that the Jets would want to pick his brain over anything. When was the last time a team cut a player and then asked for that player's advice? I understand Aaron Rodgers, is a unique case, but, the Jets decided they were moving on without him. I mean, what's Rodgers want them to do? Ask his opinion on, Allen Lazard and then maybe do the Costanza and do the opposite of whatever Rodgers tells them about Lazard. But I think it's kind of clear where this all comes from. And there's a bigger point in all of this. Aaron Rodgers is used to being treated a certain way. And that is with complete deference. And that's not unusual for a player who's had the career Aaron Rodgers has had. He's an immortal player. He's going to the Hall of Fame whenever he retires, 5 years later, he'll be in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot. There's no question about that. One of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game. And a guy who was a 4-time MVP, a guy who for over a decade was one of the truly elite passers in the league, a guy who, if he was on your team with a halfway decent supporting cast, you were at the top of the league, you were a contender. And when that happens, your team caters to you a lot. Your team essentially gives you whatever you want. You're never really presented with many situations where you don't get your way, and you're never really presented with many situations where the team's going to do something to make you unhappy. If you look at the way Rodgers handled the end of his tenure in Green Bay, a lot of it came from the fact that they had drafted Jordan Love. He was angry over that. He was angry that, he was not going to be the guy anymore because he'd had such a long and illustrious career in Green Bay. You get used to being the guy. And I think, I think all the top quarterbacks are like this. I think lots of elite players are like this. It becomes difficult when your play does not justify that degree of deference. And I think that's the point we're at with Aaron Rodgers. And it's true, it's true across sports. I mean, I remember near the end of Derek Jeter's career, and Derek Jeter was an all-time baseball player, all-time great shortstop. He wasn't that good anymore at the end of his career. And there were difficult moments the Yankees had with him. And Derek Jeter is known as, one of the great teammates of all time, one of the great players of all time, one of my favorite players of all time personally, because I'm a Yankee fan. But it's indisputable, he was not the easiest guy to deal with during the end of his career, when his play wasn't as good as his reputation was anymore. And, with Rodgers, the big argument for bringing him back was that, he could be the stopgap quarterback. And the argument was, well, who's going to be a better stopgap quarterback than him? And there were a couple of flaws, I think, behind this logic. And I've argued this extensively. One is that his play really was not very good last year. His play was pretty much at the level of a stopgap quarterback you could get for a far cheaper price. And the other aspect of this was the price. Rodgers came with a $37.5 million price tag if he returns this season. But beyond those things, one of the big problems with bringing Rodgers back is that when you have a guy who has been catered to the extent Aaron Rodgers has been through his career, and not unjustly so, not entirely unjustly so, at least. I mean, he has played at the level where he's earned that degree of deference near the end of your career, when you're just one of the guys, when the focus is not on you. When, if the team drafts a quarterback, you may be benched if they fall out of the race to get the rookie quarterback some snaps. That's not something you can expect an Aaron Rodgers to buy into. And even if he said he was willing to, it wasn't that hard to see him change his mind once the rubber hit the road. And these comments, these show that he was not willing to take a back seat. These comments show that, he still wanted to be treated with a degree of deference. Players across the league get cut without making a big scene. It happens to thousands of players at the end of training camp every year. But not everybody's most of those players will never experience the treatment Aaron Rodgers has gotten through most of his career. His teams have overwhelmingly deferred to him. I mean, you saw what happened with the Jets the last 2 years. Jets gave him everything he asked for. Every time that he wanted the Jets to get a player, the Jets got him that player. Whenever the Jets wanted him, wanted a coaching move. Whenever he wanted a coaching move, the Jets made that coaching move. I mean, crazy that Nathaniel Hackett was still the offensive coordinator at the start of the 2024 season. That was in deference to Rodgers. And Aaron Glenn's coming in. Aaron Glenn wants to establish himself as the leader of the team, as any new coach should when he inherits a losing situation. And if Aaron Rodgers was here, it was always going to be about Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers would always want it to be about Aaron Rodgers. And these statements, well, pick your brain. I mean, why would you pick the brain of a player you cut? That makes no sense. I mean, that's literally a statement that could not make less sense. But that's where that's Aaron Rodgers' mindset. And on some levels, he's earned the right to feel that way because he's had such an illustrious career. But at this point, that's not worth the price of having Aaron Rodgers. And I don't think we would ever be in a situation where Aaron Rodgers would be likely to defer to Aaron Glenn because, look, he's out here publicly complaining about the way he was treated. This is a guy who he hasn't just been treated well by his teams. I mean, outside of one short stretch in 2021, the media has never criticized him. I mean, I'm not going to go into what happened in 2021 because that was one point where he was criticized. But outside of that, media has nothing bad to say about him. I mean, look at the way he played last year and look at the media commentary about him as though he's still an elite quarterback. It's just a situation that was never going to work. And these comments, I think, kind of show his mindset and show you why it would never work. Aaron Rodgers is in the past.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen.
Well. The NBA playoffs are here, and y'all, I can't wait.
You are Locked On Nuggets, your daily Denver Nuggets podcast.
I think it's going to be a great series. I think one of the most untold stories about this year in the last several months has been the fact that the Clippers, look, they have been such a dominant team on both ends of the court. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, Ryan, Dime, there's a chance they could have two, not one, two players on all NBA ballots by the end of the season. And I think that the NBA community at large, if you haven't got a chance to watch Ivica Zubac play this year, he has been tremendous. I thought he should have been an all-star this year. That's how good he's been. I think he has an argument for first team all defense this year. Probably won't make it, but at least make the second team this year. He has been such an important player for them. And y'all, the trio, Kawhi Leonard, James Harden, Zubac, that has been the linchpin of the greatness of what the LA Clippers have been this year. And Dime, I'm not going to lie, I cannot wait to see it.
It sounds like you were picking us to win here, Swipe. I mean, that was some good stuff. You're right. Zubac has been amazing. Best season of his career. James Harden's been great. You picking us to win?
No, we'll get into that here in a little bit. I just want to look. I think it's just important to pay homage to what people have been doing. I think
facts.
If you're talking about what the Clippers are, Ryan, I think there's a lot of advantages they have, and there's a reason why I think honestly they really match up well with almost everybody in the NBA because of their personnel.
They're so versatile, man. I just pulling some numbers about this team. When those three guys and Norman Powell are on the floor, I think it was a plus 15 net rating in 1,000 possessions. So basically when Kawhi came back, and they've been so good together on the floor, I kind of equate that to about where the Nuggets were when they won the title. And that should, I think, scare a lot of people based off of the versatility that group has. You've got a leading playmaker in James Harden. You've got some defense all the way around, and you've got just dangerous guys. So it's going to be tough. And I want to make sure to stress this to Nuggets fans. They are not to be trifled with, the Clippers. These are not the same old Clippers. And I think that's one of the first questions that I really have for Dime. How different does this team feel without Paul George, with some of the new guys that they have in there? How different is the feeling this time around? Is this going to be different?
Extremely different in the sense that the Clippers have approached this season far more seriously than the seasons with Paul George. And that starts with having defensive personnel and guys that are going to go out there and set a tone defensively. Chris Dunn, Derek Jones Jr. have been those guys. Nicholas Batum has helped a little bit, but he's had his minutes limited a bit more throughout the season, just kind of, I think, saving him for the playoffs, because remember, he's older and he played in the Olympics. But this defensive identity of this team is strong. They go out there and compete every single night. And a lot of that is, as I said, Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr. and Ivica Zubac behind them. And without Paul George, he's just kind of an inherent excuse maker, and you never know what kind of player he wants to be. Does he want more on-ball touches? Does he want to be off-ball more? There was always just this, we couldn't satisfy PG, and it seemed like we couldn't satisfy the pairing of Kawhi and PG, but now it feels like the pecking order is very clear. It's Kawhi Leonard as the guy, James Harden controlling the game the most, being our pick and roll guy, but our second option, then Zubac, and then Norman Powell, and they all play a distinctively different way. So it's really two real stars, a third guy in Zoo who you can argue is a star, and then Norm and great role players.
Oh, no. There's no argument. He's getting all NBA votes this year, Ryan Blackburn. And you know what he'll be able to argue? The Zoo will be able to say that I've gotten more all the NBA votes than the Nuggets' second best player in Jamal Murray.
It's wild, man. It just every year because Jokic does so much and he soaks up so many of the minutes and the impact, and it's deservedly so, obviously. But he does have other guys that really do help him, and one of those guys is Jamal Murray, who I think Clippers fans and pretty universally feel like that's a dangerous guy. That is a dangerous player that you have to be watching out for and making sure he doesn't go off every single time, and he could be liable to go off at every single minute. Aaron Gordon has had great moments against the Clippers. Michael Porter, we're going to find out what Michael Porter's made of in this series. We're going to find out what Christian Brown is made of in this series. But if Jamal Murray doesn't play like the second best player on a championship team, it kind of matching what Zubac does, doing what Kawhi and James Harden can do, then it's going to be a long series for Denver, and they'll probably go home.
Yeah, so I'm actually curious about this. Don, when you think about how the Clippers are going to try to defend Nikola Jokic, what are some of the things you think they're going to do in terms of just deploying defensive coverages versus him, whether in the post, at the nail, top of the key, DHO, pick and roll, isolation on the post? Do you kind of have an idea of what you think they should do in that matchup?
I've been thinking about it a lot. As far as in the post, when we play the Nuggets, it's always, are we going to let Jokic try to go off for 50 and limit everybody else? Or are we going to try to, send 2 at him and make him give up the ball? Do you guys remember that game that Jokic shot 9 for 32 last year?
Yeah, that was last year, December. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't think that means much going into this season, but I do think that Zoo is a big body that can do as well as anyone could try to do in today's NBA against him in the post. There's no one that can guard the elite one-on-one players in NBA history all time, and he's one of those guys. So I don't, there's not a great solution either way, but no, can it shift to me asking you a follow-up question?
Sure.
And how do you feel about, I know this Nuggets team's offensive rating has been, 4th in the league this year?
Well, I mean, the Jokic on the court, they're the best in the NBA, but because of the bench unit and non-Jokic minutes, it's kind of carried it down a little bit.
Okay, well, 4th is still top 5, so that's still great. How do you feel about the fact that you're a good 3-point shooting team, but you don't take a lot of them? Depending on who's in the game, let's say Jokic catches the ball in the post and Westbrook's out there or Peyton Watson's out there. If you're the Clippers, or I know Aaron Gordon's been shooting super well this year. Is he going to be willing to take 5 or 6 in a game if we give it to him? Would you double if you're the Clippers?
Well, I think some of this is with Zoo. I would actually just focus on single coverage with Zoo for the most part to start the game. See, the thing is not necessarily about Jokic's scoring. It's about getting Zoo in foul trouble. One of the things about guarding Jokic that Zoo has experienced is that it's not just the on ball, it's the off ball stuff with him. It's the face cutting. Zoo, because he lacks the prototypical sideline to sideline speed or just some of the burst, Jokic will run by him in a half court setting, just kind of angling like he's going to go set a screen, run downhill, or he gets Zoo off balance. His arm gets stuck inside of the cherry bin, and the next thing you know, it's a foul, and he has 2 before the first quarter's out. I mean, that's the kind of stuff I would more so be worried about if I was the Clippers. If you get Zoo at 2 fouls in the first half, then you start to send help or double, because what you don't want to do, Zoo's not in the game, Jokic's into the game, and now they're just super high efficient interior looks that you're focusing on. And to your point about the coverages, the thing is when Russ is in the game, he's going to mostly have the ball. So the Clippers are probably going to try to go underneath those screens. Russ has done a good job as of late, though, is that using Jokic to screen on 2 and then trying to still penetrate to get to the paint and then either flipping it back out to Jokic for a floater or for a lay or laying it up himself. Aaron Gordon, the question about him, Dom, since the playoffs last year, he's shooting over 40%. So he's over for a calendar year now, been shooting above 40% from 3. And this season, he had the career high in 3-point attempts and shot 45% from 3. So I think at this point in time, for me, he's a shooter. He's honestly, even over MPJ this year, Ryan, he's been their best catch and shoot 3-point shooter. So I think that's teams are guarding him now as if he is that, but he's still going to get good looks, but he has to convert and hit them.
Dime, let me ask you this real quick. So if it's not Zoo, let's say Zoo gets into foul trouble, who is the second best Jokic defender on the team?
I would honestly think it's Batum.
I was going to say the same thing.
Not Eubanks. I mean, I don't think he's going to play at all this series. It's too high of a level of basketball. But
yeah,
that's the key way to. If there's ways that the Nuggets can win this series, it's get Zoo in foul trouble, and if you can force Harden to some bad games, which that can happen. For me, it's the James Harden as the X factor for the Clippers, and Jamal Murray is the guy for the Nuggets. I mean, the Nuggets go on how well Murray plays. It seems like more often than not. But my bad. What was your question? I'm sorry.
Oh, just who's the second best defender?
Yeah, Batum for sure.
Yeah,
but we got to try to keep Zoo on the court as much as possible. It's gonna be a big challenge for Zoo to play defense without fouling. Honestly, when Swiper was talking about Jokic catching the ball at the nail or the foul line area or high post, that is going to be more challenging than in the low post. I think Zoo is actually pretty good in the low post, even though Jokic is dangerous scoring from there. But it's just how he could turn the corner and how he plays those dribble handoffs with Jamal Murray that makes things tough. I think the one thing that I actually haven't even really thought about before I got on here, and I got to think about the next couple of days, is how are we going to defend the classic Jamal Murray Jokic pick and pop? That is the number one thing that every team goes to when having to play the Nuggets. But I will say this: the Clippers have some good guys to throw at Jamal Murray and make life tough for him for sure. And I know Swipe is a Chris Dunn guy. He's been great this season for us.
You're welcome.
The series is creeping closer.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast.
So this question of how to defend Luka, I'm sure it is one that you guys are spending a fair amount of time on at Locked On Wolves. For my part, Andy, I think teams that consistently try to double or trap Luka pay for it more often than not. There's a downside to not doing it, but to me, to answer the question that Ben was asking in the last segment, I feel like when you try to throw extra bodies at Luka, it does not turn out well.
Yeah, I think it's in a lot of ways the difference between the idea of doubling Anthony Edwards, who we're going to talk about him, obviously. He's a great player. I mean, he's truly one of the great players in the league, and he can do some playmaking, but he's not a high-end elite playmaker. It's the difference between doubling someone like Ant versus, and especially with the cast of characters alongside him, versus trying to double somebody like Luka, who is great at passing out, but also he will often at that point be passing out to either LeBron or Austin Reeves. So in a lot of ways, defending Luka is really a question of defending all three of those guys, if not at the same time, certainly like in cohesion. I think for the most part, and this is, I think, maybe good news for the Wolves, at least on some level, because they've been a good defensive team and they've got a lot of wing defenders with length and stuff like that. I think the more you can try to play those guys straight up and honest and force Luka or LeBron or Austin into working for whatever they get, make or miss, but you just make them work. You make them work to get into the spots that they want, and you just make it difficult for them. Make it a taxing thing to get their points, even if they do, as opposed to trying to get the ball out of any one of those three hands, because in all likelihood, at least one other of those guys is going to be out there. And if you give LeBron or Austin the opportunity to get the ball with advantage, that can be really difficult, especially when the Lakers are playing their version of the death lineup. And with LeBron, Luka, Austin, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Rui Hachimura, because then you have five guys that at minimum you have to account for.
Yeah,
like none of them are guys that you want to ignore. So for what it's worth, if the Wolves are capable of doing a lot of it, that I think is the best way to try to handle a difficult problem.
Yeah, I think just two things happen when you double the Lakers, whether it's LeBron. LeBron is a little more doubleable just because, he is I think a little bit more turnover prone, not quite as Luka's a weird kind of explosive, but I think, you understand that sort of short space ability to free himself up and all that kind of stuff with the handle and whatever. LeBron gets into a little bit more trouble with that kind of thing. But even then, either one of those guys are still so big and have such good vision that you're now, it's 2-on-1 in one spot and 4-on-3 everywhere else.
Yep.
The remaining guys on the Lakers, particularly with the main lineups that we're talking about, are such good passers that even if DFS is the next guy in line that gets the pass, he's going to find the open player. And now you're allowing LeBron or Luka or Reeves to operate with an unbalanced floor, and Minnesota's got to get back and scramble and fix that.
If you're going to double one of those guys, double Austin. Like Austin is the guy that you will most likely get into trouble throwing multiple bodies at. Just because.
But even then, I think they're smart about getting out of that stuff. It might work briefly, but then it's not a sustainable strategy. I do think though, the best thing to do is just try to get all three of those guys to isolate, make unbalanced floor, and say we're just going to let you guys play one-on-one.
And I think that's possible. Chris Finch doesn't like to double guys. The only time I could really, and I'm sure they did it at times, it's really more selective. It's never like the Wolves will play teams, and their strategy from the get-go is send send 2 at Ant, like the whole game, just do it. And the Wolves don't like to do that. They did. That's how they came back and beat OKC. Actually, I think the game right before they played the Lakers in February, they were down 20 plus in the fourth quarter. The way they came back was they just sent everything at SGA and made, J-Dub and the other guys, Chet didn't play in that game. Other guys beat them and they couldn't do it. They couldn't knock down a three. The Wolves don't like to do that in general, though. And I think there's too many other guys, like to your guys' point, like there's 3 guys. Plus, I mean, you could argue that, Rui and some of these other guys are more dangerous than some of the supporting cast members that OKC has once you get past SGA if Chet Holmgren's not on the floor. So, I think that's a strategy that certainly teams use against Ant, and he's improved, but he's not great against it. And the Wolves, I think they're going to come out with trying to guard him straight up, trying to guard Luka straight up. I think it's going to be probably Jaden McDaniels to start. And he's had mixed success against Luka. In theory, the length bothers him, but he's just so slight of build. And he's foul prone. And, Luka's going to get those calls in the playoffs. I think it's going to be Jaden. And then I think if he gets into foul trouble, it might be Anthony Edwards kind of next up. I know people have talked about Julius Randle maybe guarding him at times. And Naz Reid's had some limited success or success in limited run guarding Luka. He did it actually a little bit in the playoffs last year and was just as effective as anyone. So I think it is going to be straight up, just one body after another. Like, all right, you're in foul trouble or you're ineffective. Next man up. Let's see what we can do. And then maybe, pick your spots to put 2 on LeBron or 2 on Austin Reeves to try and generate some turnovers and offense going the other way, which is something I talked about on yesterday's Lockdown Wolves is, that's an area the Wolves don't run a lot. But when they do run off of steals, they're pretty effective, and the Lakers don't have a good transition defense. So I do think there's going to be an element of kind of picking your spots to double, to put 2 on the ball and try and generate some offense that way by getting a turnover and going back the other way.
Speaking of Ant and the different ways that, the Lakers would look to try to slow him down, I was looking at his splits against the Lakers this season, and whether you're talking about lower points per game, lower percentages from the field, fewer trips to the line, pretty bad assist to turnover ratio, the Lakers did a pretty good job this season limiting his effectiveness. But also, once I started looking at some of the specific matchup data, 2 of the 3 guys most involved were Anthony Davis or Max Christie, who are obviously no longer on this team. When you look at the current incarnation of the Lakers, how well equipped do you think they are for, at minimum, making Ant work, if not actually leading him to having a bad series?
I think, and you guys tell me if I'm wrong, my perspective on this is I think the Lakers are going to, and I'm not saying he's going to start, but I think Jared Vanderbilt is going to be pretty key. I think I believe he guarded him at times last year. I know he did in the one game Vanderbilt played against the Wolves and ended up getting ejected. And I think that was if I'm remembering right, Vando was kind of involved in goading Ant into those technicals. I think
Vando
he's got the right
never.
Yeah, it doesn't. Timberwolves fans love Vando. I mean, he had the V8 nickname in Minnesota. Like, people love him. I think he's the best bet as far as a straight up defender. My hunch is, assuming he doesn't start, and I said the other day, like, again, you guys would know better than me.
He won't.
If I'm the Lakers, I'd consider starting Jared Vanderbilt just to guard Ant. But my hunch is they're just going to put 2 on the ball or be very willing to do that. Or the way they guarded him last time around, at least I was rewatching that game from February, was tried to guard him straight up. I think Rui was on him at first, and then like they kind of did the thing where you just try and basically play the gaps, and you kind of guard him with 1.5 guys, and you're not really doubling him, but you're shading that way. I think that's probably what they do. But then when Vando's on the floor, I think they try and go straight up against Anthony Edwards. And we talked about this earlier. I mean, Ant isn't consistent when he gets blitzed. He was blitzed more than any team or more than any individual player in the league this year in pick and roll, and his points per possession were okay, but they were lower than like the next 3 guys on that list are like Steph, Luka, Jason Tatum, and then like I think Dame is after that, and they all had higher points per possession than Anthony Edwards when getting blitzed. So I do think the evidence is there that you can do that and you can frustrate him, and he's either going to go into hero ball mode and turn the ball over, take bad shots, or he might turn it over trying to be a hero and make a great pass. So if I'm the Lakers, I'm completely open to blitzing him, making somebody else beat them, the old cliche. And, secondarily, if Vanderbilt's in the game and you can handle that offensively, then he's not a bad one-on-one, defender for Ant.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen.
Well, they meet again. It's the Pacers, it's the Bucks.
You are Locked On NBA Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Of course, it's Pacers Bucks, guys, right? Like, what else? How else could this season have ended for either team? After last year, the Pacers dominated the regular season. This time, it was one miraculous shot away from being 4-0 Bucks. It's just fate. The brewing rivalry is here.
It is. And this was one I was hoping for because I like the rivalry aspect of it. I like teams facing each other often, and they're in the same division, and divisions don't tend to mean much in the NBA. So, like, seeing the same teams getting into the playoffs is kind of fun, especially since the Pacers are returning like the exact same cast from last year. So for Bucks fans looking for revenge, like you can see the pathway forward here.
I didn't have quite the strong feelings Camille and a lot of our audience did, for reasons we'll get into throughout the show here. But yeah, I mean, the division importance. I mean, look at the Central Division. We'll see what happens with the Bulls as we record this, but maybe 5 teams in the playoffs from that Central Division.
Love a good Midwest feud. The nicest people, their basketball teams all hate each other. It's funny to think about the differences between this year and last year's series because obviously there's this giant Greek guy who is like the thing. You know, we'll talk a lot about him today. But the Bucks are so different even beyond that it feels like a totally different series to me, even minus Dame in a way that's going to be really fascinating. But start with Giannis, obviously. But what to you guys are the big differences about the Bucks this year that, one, Pacers people need to know, and 2, will make this a totally different series if you think it'll be different from last year?
Justin, you want to kick us off here? I know something that we talked about a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Giannis, obviously, but the fact that the Bucks are not one of the worst defenses in the league is probably the biggest starting point here. You know, Camille and I talked about it during some of our shows this week. I talked about it on several of our post-game shows and radio shows too. Go back to that series last year and look at the players the Bucks were playing in that series, and especially their bench. That's
on
been
the perimeter mostly.
I mean, Danilo Gallinari was seeing minutes in that series. You were relying on Pat Beverly in the starting lineup. It was Jay Crowder, right? It was an old, slow roster that couldn't defend. And I mean, that was the big advantage the Pacers had. You knew they're going to run and there's nothing we can do against this. So the defense being much improved is a big part, but having a reliable bench that has now kind of all of a sudden become like, this is the bench, but this is also the quasi starters because these are the guys that we think Doc is going to lean
like
on
every game.
Yeah, they have been, and they've been a really big difference to this Bucks team. I mean, the Bucks have like the best 3-point shooting bench in the NBA right now with Gary Trent Jr., Bobby Portis Jr., Kevin Porter Jr., who has been playing some exceptional ball since getting to Milwaukee in comparison to what we saw with him at the Clippers, and AJ Green. And then on top of that, too, in the starting lineup, as we've currently seen it constructed with Taurean Prince out there being able to knock down, catch and shoot shots, putting the ball on the floor a little bit. The Kyle Kuzma piece of it has been a little bit of an adventure at times, but the value that he brings to the Bucks, I think, is more on the defensive end so far than what we've seen offensively. But overall, I just think this Bucks team this year has more options than what they were able to throw out at the Pacers last year. Even Jericho Sims being healthy, I'm not sure how many minutes he'll actually get during the series, but to have the option to play a defensive, versatile, switching big is going to be really huge for the Bucks. Just the options piece of it, I think, is really big for Milwaukee.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You both led with 2 things that I have talked about already. One is that, like, I remember thinking in the middle of the season last year when the Bucks traded campaign for Patrick Beverley, like, oh, they did that because their perimeter defense sucks and they need someone who can guard. Maybe Patrick Beverley can have an impact in the series. He did, not a good impact, but he impacted the series, certainly, yes. Things happened because of Patrick Beverley. But like Beasley and Crowder, all those guys like just couldn't keep any Pacers ball handler in front of them, right? So the Pacers lived in the paint. And hey, look, when you have the best offense in the league besides the Celtics, you're going to score a lot when you can get in the paint. That will not be as easy this year. They still scored pretty well against the Bucks this year, outside of that December game when the zone just destroyed them. But I do think it will be more challenging for them to do that, especially as TJ McConnell has seen a decline this year in his effectiveness. But it's going to be a lot on Haliburton and Mathurin and Nembhard to keep up paint pressure against better defenders. And that's not easy against the Bucks. And yeah, the shooting part, I think, is the scariest part because of the Giannis passing element where he just like dimes these guys up across the court and you can't double him as easily in the post. And all these guys are drilling everything. Gary Trent, has he missed a three against the Pacers like this whole season? It feels like he's like 60 for 60. So those two things are like huge, scary switches in the Bucks personnel around the fact that Giannis is playing this time, which is crazy because up until last year, I think the Bucks had won 12 in a row that Giannis played against the Pacers. Like, I think everybody in the Central Division has been dealing with that. So there's a lot of little challenges that will make this challenging, obviously, for the Pacers this year in a way that it wasn't last year, even though they still have, obviously, their own advantages that we'll get to.
Yeah, I mean, Gary Trent Jr., luckily for you guys, the first game against the Bucks came out, or luckily for the Bucks, wasn't in the first 10 games of the season. Otherwise, he would have been missing everything. But yeah, that's been one of the big stories. The Bucks have been able to keep up and push the pace. Their perimeter defense has been much improved. There's a lot of minutia and interesting matchups to get into with what we saw in that lone loss for the Bucks and Taurean Prince taking on the Tyrese Haliburton role. I don't know that I'd expect that or a heavy dose of that, given what we saw the last time that happened. But I think the big thing is you kind of toe a line where I'm going to say something, but I'm not going all the way over the line here. And a lot of Bucks fans have kind of leapt over that line. Interesting to see some of the discourse. I am by no means saying the Bucks are better off without Damian Lillard, because they're not. But with Dame out and looking at what the matchup was going to be for the Bucks, either the Pacers or the Knicks, you need some help defensively in the backcourt. And Ryan Rollins and Kevin Porter Jr. are both much more suited to take on that challenge than Damian Lillard was.
They are. And for the Bucks, I think this is a series, and to Justin's point, not overlooking the Pacers, but this is a first round series against the Pacers where it feels like Giannis being the lone superstar with how the rest of the team is constructed should be enough for the Bucks to come out of this first round series victorious. And in large part why I have that confidence, it lies in Giannis. Like Giannis has been a problem for the Pacers for the last 4 or 5 years. And if we
no, like 10 or less. Longer.
Even if you just isolate the numbers for the last 2 years, because this Pacers team, as we see this year, is very similar to last year. Like Giannis is averaging like 37 points a game against the Pacers over the last 2 years, and his ability to get downhill, his playmaking, and how he's been playing the last few weeks to end the season, getting that rhythm of being the primary playmaker, I think is going to show up big for the Bucks.
Yeah, Giannis is just terrifying. I mean, and they had this like wall thing they did last year and sometimes this year, you know, and I think this will happen at times, not all the time in this series. You guys know about it, but it's one guy on him, two guys just to the side, like make him pass. And I remember being in Indy in the game, he talked about like, we got to think about this loss and we're getting freaky, yeah, blah, blah, blah. You know, and that was the game where he said, yeah, I've seen that coverage before, but like I'm naturally pass first, so I give it up. And at the time I thought, I don't think of Giannis as pass first, but that's interesting. And then this year he's like, oh yeah, he totally is. Like he just carves up that coverage and his passing's been better with better play finishers. And so I think not only is Giannis capable of going for, name your number, 30, 35, 40, whatever, against like literally any defender in the NBA. But if he's better against those kinds of coverages, the Pacers are going to have to get really creative. And I think that is going to be a challenge for them defensively, because as you guys have seen when he won the Bucks championship and in many other series along the way, Giannis is really good at busting up all types of freaky defenses.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, Giannis is, I think sometimes that his like basketball IQ is underappreciated, because Giannis normally can see something in the first quarter, kind of get an idea of what that look is. And as the game goes on, you see how he's able to adapt to what's being thrown at him, because he's seen a lot of different coverages, like that wall you mentioned when the Raptors first unveiled that back in 19 in the playoffs. It was hard for him to get past that because the passing wasn't there yet, but he has worked diligently at that. And he's a pretty good playmaker now. So it's interesting seeing teams throw different things at him and seeing how he takes the game to really figure that out. And normally by the end, he's cooking.
And as the Pacers saw in December, he can just turn around and shoot a mid-ranger over the top sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
It's been the biggest part of his game this year, and I would imagine that's what the Pacers are going to say, and any team for that matter. All right, continue to hit those in the playoffs.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen.
Tre'Davious White is back with the Buffalo Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast.
Okay, let's start with the big news, which is Tre'Davious White returning to the Buffalo Bills, agreeing to a 1-year deal worth up to $6.8 million. Up to is a very important part of this reporting. I am guessing this deal is loaded with incentives, and I'm guessing this deal has very little guaranteed money. And so we'll see what the real numbers are. I don't think that he signed a 1-year, $6.8 million deal. So let's wait until we get the details before we really react to the financial side of this. But obviously, Tre'Davious White, a familiar name, first-round pick of the Buffalo Bills back in 2017, had an incredible start to his career, one of the premier cornerbacks in all of football. And then, as you know, injuries. 2021 ACL tear, 2023 ruptured his Achilles tendon. And it's just a very unfortunate series of events that took away from what was shaping up to be an outstanding career for Tre'Davious White. And so the Bills released him last offseason with a post-June 1st designation. He winds up signing with the Rams, and he started the first 4 games of 2024 for the Los Angeles Rams, and he struggled. He gave up 4 touchdowns in 4 games. They asked him to play some man coverage and carry some routes vertically down the field. That didn't go well for him. They released him after he started the first 4 games of the season and really played just about every snap. Then he winds up finishing the year with the Baltimore Ravens and actually played a decent amount for that team. He was part of their dime package, which winds up being 30 to 40% of snaps. He had some good moments, including some very impressive coverage reps against George Pickens. So it's nice to see that he not only finished and had a healthy season last year, but there was growth throughout the year and started to look a lot better once he latched on with the Baltimore Ravens. So what do I think about this? Well, I certainly hope this works out. You know, Trey White is such a fun player to root for, outstanding dude, high-level player prior to the injuries. And it is good that he was completely healthy last year. Again, another year removed from the injuries. So you're certainly hoping that not only is everything strong and good to go with his legs, but that he's got a lot of confidence in the athleticism and ability to plant and drive. He's 30 years old now. He turned 30 back in January. So this will be his age 30 season coming up. You're obviously worried a little bit about athletic decline. Surely that's the case. I mean, he's 30 and has had 2 major injuries since 2021. But I would say that he probably, despite that, has more athleticism than what Rasul Douglas offered last season for the Bills. And so, maybe you did get a little bit more athletic opposite of Christian Benford. Now, one thing that's heavy on my mind right now is Trey White a starter or bust? Now, he's got a higher ceiling than Dane Jackson, who is the guy I currently penciled in or previously penciled in as a guy opposite of Christian Benford. He's got a higher ceiling than Dane Jackson. So we talked about how Dane Jackson comes in and helps set the floor opposite of Christian Benford. And I think the floor's been elevated a little bit more with the arrival of Trey White. But here's the deal with Trey White is he doesn't offer a lick of special teams value. And so is he either a starter or bust? Can Trey White not be a starter? Does he help you enough in a reserve role given there's no real special teams upside here? Is this a Kyer Elam situation where he's either a starter or an inactive player? It's tough to be a depth corner and not play special teams. It's kind of a required part of the job. And so that's definitely something that's on my mind. And of course, he'll have to prove that he can be the best option the Bills have across from Christian Benford. And we'll see how that all shakes out. Obviously, there's a lot of time for this to play out between OTAs and camp and preseason. We'll get a feel for where he's at. And if he's the best option, he's the best option, but we'll find out. As far as draft implications go, we certainly have talked a ton about the need at corner and drafting a corner early in the draft. I don't really think this changes any of that. You still need a long-term solution across from Christian Benford. And if anything, I think Trey White's arrival puts the Bills in a position to have an increased appetite to maybe take a swing on upside. And there's several players that the Bills could consider at corner, whether it's pick 30, a trade back out of the first round, maybe pick 56, where, there's some questions right now, but there's a lot of ceiling. I think about a guy like Savone Revel out of East Carolina coming off of an ACL tear in September. Does this help increase your likelihood of drafting that guy, knowing you want to make sure he's fully healthy? You love the player, you love the ceiling, you love the upside, but you don't want to be in a position where he's got to play right now. Does Trey White's arrival help ease that burden and increase your appetite for Savone Revel? What about a Darian Porter out of Iowa State? All the physical upside you can imagine in a corner in terms of size, athleticism, length, really high-level flashes, just not a lot of experience, right? Only a one-year starter. Do you get more intrigued by the possibility of adding Darian Porter, knowing that you have a Trey White in the building? How about Azareye'h Thomas? Very young player, 20 years old. Flashy. Big-time upside, in my opinion. If you draft him, does this ease the burden for him have to be an early starter? How about Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame? He's got his own injury stuff, 2 hip injuries in the last 4 years, plus a shoulder injury, all 3 required surgery. Does this give you an opportunity to make sure he's healthy and ready to go before having to play? So maybe that's kind of the draft implication. It doesn't take away from the need, but maybe it opens your mind to some different prospects that are a little bit more risky, knowing you have Tre'Davious White in the fray. And obviously, Trey White's going to be a major benefit to whoever the Bills draft. It'll be a benefit to the entire roster, right? A-plus dude. Former team captain. I mean, Christian Benford's obviously the guy at corner, but Trey White will be a benefit to him. But ultimately, I think this takes some pressure off from having to not only draft a rookie, but to start a rookie in that spot. Now, if that rookie's the best option, he's the best option. But that'll play itself out. But I certainly think that helps ease the burden a little bit. Again, not taking away from the need, not taking away from the plan, but changes things just a little bit. I was texting with someone in our Locked On Bills subtext community. After Bills news happens, I send out a text to everyone with my initial thoughts when the news broke yesterday. And the guy that I was texting with said something that I thought really summed things up perfectly. He said, "My expectations are low, but my hope is high." I think it's a very reasonable outlook to have on Trey White's return. My expectations are low, but my hope is high. Very interesting. All right, so that's Trey White back in Buffalo. We'll hear from Brandon Beane next week. He's set to speak to the media on Tuesday. So we'll get some more details on the mindset behind the decision to bring Trey White back.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. Play high-quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube, 3rd Gen.
Well, it's official. Steve Angeli is headed to the transfer portal.
You are Locked On Irish, your daily podcast on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
I really want to focus on Angeli for a bit because this situation, even though it was a little bit predictable at the end, it's still a bummer because I really like Steve Angeli. He is an easy guy to root for. He loves Notre Dame, and he gave everything he had for years to this program to get the chance to be the starting quarterback. And unfortunately for him, it just didn't work out, but that happens. Ultimately, his decision reflects, the reality, the cold reality of modern college football, and honestly, the strength of Notre Dame's quarterback room. But still, there is a human element in all of this that sometimes gets lost, and it's been well reported that Angeli wanted to be the starting quarterback at Notre Dame more than anything, even if it was just for one season. That's why he didn't run when Notre Dame went out and got Sam Hartman in the transfer portal in 2023. That's why he didn't run when they went out and got Riley Leonard to start over him in 2024. He was waiting for 2025, and this year was his best shot at it, and it just didn't work out. So my heart breaks for anyone who invests so much time and energy into something, and it just didn't work out. But even though it didn't work out at Notre Dame, I think Angeli is going to finish his career strong. He appeared in 21 games over 3 seasons. He completed 58 of 80 passes for 772 yards, 10 touchdowns, and just 1 interception. That's not a ton of volume, obviously, and he was playing a lot in garbage time, but it's really efficient work. And he made 1 career start back in 2023 for the Sun Bowl, and he played really well in that game. He finished 15 of 19 for 232 yards passing, had 3 touchdowns through the air, and he even added 27 yards on the ground. The kid flat out produced when he was given the chance, and his Orange Bowl moment cannot be overlooked either. That 2-minute drill right before halftime, where he stepped in for Riley Leonard and led a composed 13-play drive that ended up in points, that shifted the momentum of the game. Notre Dame probably does not beat Penn State in the college football playoff semifinals and go to the national championship if Steve Angeli did not come through for the Irish on that drive. He looked calm, he looked poised, and he looked confident more than anything, right? He was thrown into the fire, was not fazed at all, and led the team down the field. That is not garbage time. That was winning football in a really difficult situation. But I think we have to be honest with ourselves about that drive and the way that we talk about it. And I'm guilty of this as well. There was a play late in that drive. Steve Angeli had already driven them down the field for the most part, where he was not able to evade pressure and he fumbled the football. Abdul Carter, who is going to be a top 3 pick most likely in the upcoming NFL draft next week, was right there to pounce on it. But Carter was dealing with a very significant shoulder injury. He was still able to dominate in that game, but it was really the first glimpse into what he was dealing with because he was right there, but he literally could not lift his arm up far enough to grab the ball. So then Billy Schrouth was able to jump on it before Carter got there, and Notre Dame stayed alive on that drive. If Carter's shoulder was just a little bit healthier, or if he was maybe just a couple inches closer to the ball in that situation when that happened, he probably recovers the football. Notre Dame loses that game most likely. And the conversation around Angeli in that game is entirely different. He's no longer considered the savior. He's the guy that almost led the drive, but ultimately fumbled it away. I'm not saying this to disparage Angeli because the drive is still very impressive, right? He got them to that point to begin with, and then he bounced back after that play and set up the field goal. but we have to admit he made a pretty big mistake and got lucky. That happens. Still very impressive. And that was the defining moment of his career at Notre Dame and is a big reason why the Irish won that game. But I think when we have to really honestly evaluate all these quarterbacks, like that stuff does matter. Even though it's a game of inches and he got lucky in that scenario, we have to consider all the facts in this situation. But we get to the spring of 2025, and Angeli made it clear that he believed Notre Dame was where he was meant to be. He could have transferred after the season. He decided not to. He wanted to come back and compete for the starting job. He said all the right things. He carried himself the right way, and he competed. Like, he truly believed that he could start, and for good reason, right? He had waited his turn. Now is his time. He's a smart, steady quarterback. He's got good touch. He's accurate. He's got great leadership qualities. The team seems to really like him. And he can also make some plays with his legs too. Like, he's not great at avoiding pressure in the pocket, but we saw in the Sun Bowl, like, he can get out and he can run a little bit for sure. He also ran some against Purdue, but he's not the most physically gifted guy in the room, but he was talented enough to deserve a shot to lead this team. But Notre Dame had 3 guys who could compete. And Marcus Freeman said after the spring game, it was the most honest statement he made about the quarterback competition throughout the spring. He said he'd prefer if the quarterback competition were cut to 2 heading into summer and toward training camp. So after he said that, I think a lot of people perked up a little bit, and you're like, okay, he actually said it, right? Whoever came in third is probably going to be out the door. So it's not a huge surprise. This is what happened, considering just how impressive CJ Carr was in the spring game and throughout spring practice, and how impressive Kenny Minchey was all spring. Like, for as much as I like Steve Angeli, I think most rational fans who watch the 3 of them play see that Carr and Minchey are a little bit more talented and they have a higher ceiling. Plus, they have more eligibility, and all of this stuff factors in. Someone had to come in third. I've been saying that a lot. They're all good. They all deserve a shot, but somebody's going to come in third, and it looks like Angeli came in third. So now he's on the move. Where could he go, and how successful can he be? I think Steve Angeli should look at Tennessee now that Nico Iamaleava is gone. It seemed like he was headed to UCLA, but now that's still being finalized. What a disaster of a situation that is. But Tennessee only has 2 scholarship quarterbacks right now. They've got a freshman and a redshirt freshman with 0 starting experience. I know they're going to look around for a more proven starter. I get it. They have college football playoff aspirations. They've been linked to the quarterbacks at Illinois, Baylor, and Iowa State. But if those don't work out, I think Angeli is perfect for that situation, because even though he doesn't have like a ton of playing experience, he's an adult that can come in that room and compete right away. I think he'd probably be better than those other 2 guys they have right now. And he is the type of personality that could fit in with that program and not make things weird. He's also capable of winning them football games, and I think he could be like a nice bridge player to get them to Merklinger, who's the redshirt freshman quarterback that they really like, or the top overall quarterback recruit that they got in the class of 2026, because Angeli has 2 more years left of eligibility. And if Tennessee isn't interested, I think Tulane makes sense. They've been one of the best group of 5 programs. They don't have a quarterback. So Angeli could more than likely start right away for Tulane and potentially lead them to a college football playoff berth because of the automatic bid that's given to the highest ranked group of 5 team. That's not out of the realm of possibility that Steve Angeli could be a starting quarterback in the college football playoff next year. Or if he wants to stay in the Power 4, I think Minnesota and Purdue are 2 Big Ten teams that really need a quarterback. They probably wouldn't be very good with or without Steve Angeli, right? Purdue was god-awful last year, and I know I've been making a lot of Purdue jokes on the show, but frankly, I don't think it's enough. They were just that bad last season, and maybe for Steve Angeli's health long-term, he decides, wait a second, I saw what happened to Purdue last year. I don't want to have anything to do with that. Also, Purdue plays at Notre Dame this year, so that would be really interesting, but it's an opportunity for him to start at a team who plays in one of the 2 major conferences. The thing is, though, no matter where he ends up, I think Angeli's time at Notre Dame is going to be remembered fondly. This is the epitome of a team-first guy. He was ready when his number was called, and he helped Notre Dame win a massive game in the college football playoff. And I think that's a legacy that he can be proud of. Like, it's not what he wanted, obviously. He wanted a full year as the starting quarterback, but considering how tough it is to navigate the quarterback landscape in college football, I think, he did a good job at Notre Dame, and he's going to go somewhere where he can compete for a starting job, most likely win it. And I'm genuinely rooting for the guy. Like, wherever he lands, that team is getting mature leader, and he knows how to win, and he knows how to handle pressure. But as for Notre Dame, this is the trade-off, right? Like when you recruit at a high level, like Notre Dame has done with CJ Carr and Kenny Minchie at quarterback, you're going to lose talented players who, frankly, could start elsewhere. Angeli is a perfect example of that. And now you're turning to two guys who have never started a college game. They've barely played college football. And even though I'm high on both players, that makes me a little nervous, not going to lie, especially when you consider the fact that Notre Dame opens up on the road against Miami in the season opener, and then they take on a Mike Elko-led Texas A&M defense in the home opener. Like, that is one hell of an introduction for either one of these guys when they become the starting quarterback. But that's why I thought Notre Dame would try to keep Steve Angeli around after the spring, but that's clearly not in their best interest. And if Marcus Freeman was willing to roll with a true freshman at left tackle and a redshirt freshman at left guard last year on the offensive line going into that game against Texas A&M, it really shouldn't be that big of a surprise that he was willing to ride with a more talented player, whether it be CJ Carr or Kenny Minchie, going into 2025. So yeah, I'm bummed to see Steve Angeli go because I do believe he's a good football player, but this is the cost of a competitive locker room, and you want to have enough talented guys that want to compete, but sometimes the timing just doesn't work out. Angeli gave Notre Dame everything he had, and now he gets a fresh start, and I'm going to be tuning in and rooting for him wherever he ends up.